Hi, I'm Sarah Hewins, and this is Conservation Matters. Our guests today are Mark Beaton and Glenn Berkowitz, and our topic is conservation and energy. Mark is the chair of the Green Energy Committee in the town of Kingston. He's also on the Kingston Board of Selectmen, and Mark is also a publican. Glenn is the president of Beaufort Power, LLC, an alternative and renewable energy consulting firm based in Boston. And Glenn is also an attorney. Welcome to both of you.
Welcome. Thank you, Sarah.
One of the ways I wanted to start this off was by asking you each what you feel is the thing that you mainly do and how that fits in with alternative renewable energies. We'll start with you, Mark.
Well, Sarah, you mentioned that I'm a publican, and that's not to be mistaken as Republican.
Right.
A publican runs the local pub, and it's kind of a British term. And the person that was licensed to run the local pub is supposed to take care of the welfare of his customers. So as a publican in the town of Kingston, I'm looking out for the welfare of my customers, and what I think is important for my customers is the future for our children and the world they're going to inherit. So that's my job, and as a publican, I've got a small pub in Kingston, and it's a very green business. We have 10 kilowatt solar panels, we compost, we recycle all of our waste, we have a small garden, and people say to be green is expensive, but actually to be green was a business decision, Sarah, and we save lots of money by doing the things we do in our restaurant.
Really?
And it's well received by our clientele, and it's well received by the people that have invested in the restaurant.
That's terrific. That's terrific. How about you?
And as you said, Sarah, I am an attorney, and I do dabble in standard attorney stuff to make sure the mortgage gets paid. But my passion is to pursue renewable energy, both from the development and the consulting side. I'm one of those people who really believe that when we look towards the future, where our energy comes from, how much we pay for it, what the environmental impact is something that I think will become more of an even increasingly large public policy issue.
Yes, I would agree. Tell me the kinds of projects that you've dealt with in Kingston, Mark. Have most of those been municipal projects, private projects, commercial?
Well, I'll speak to the municipal side. Being on the Board of Selectmen and chairman of the Green Energy Committee. 10 years ago, a Green Energy was formed in Kingston, Massachusetts. Volunteers from different groups, engineers, environmentalists, publisher, carpenter, and it was our goal to create some green energy, some renewables, whether it be solar or wind. And we got onto the wind side of it first, and it took us this long, but right now we have got 5 turbines in the town of Kingston. It's approximately 8 megawatts. We also have a solar farm going up on the landfill. All these projects are different forms of a business partnership. On the landfill, we've got a turbine. We lease the property. We get money for the lease. We tax the turbine. We get money for the taxes on the turbine. And there's also a purchase power agreement. The solar farm is very similar in its makeup, its business plan. And then we also have an abutting property to our wind overlay district, and there's 3 turbines up there totaling 6 megawatts. And we are the conduit for the power. And we have a purchase power agreement with the O'Donnell Group for those turbines, and we also gain taxes. So what it is on a business sense for the town of Kingston, on average, we will probably generate, if estimates are correct, and this is only an estimate, an average of $1 million a year in excess revenue for the town of Kingston.
Wow.
So that's quite an accomplishment. What happens at a town meeting, usually go to a town meeting to say, how are we going to spend our money? And usually there's not enough money to be spent.
Right.
But in Kingston, we're going to have a whole different dynamic at town meeting because there will be a positive cash flow out of these projects. And that was a consideration when the town of Kingston embraced these green energy opportunities. The beauty of having it on the landfill is we don't really have a lot of neighbors that abut the property. And it's in a very noisy area. You've got the T station, you've got a wastewater treatment plant, you've got a highway, so everyone was worried about the sound. Well, the sound is not a huge problem there because you can go up to a 10 decibel delta on your noise before the turbine, noise after. We're at 0.9 to 2.4 decibel variance, which is nothing more than a whisper. So what we also did out of this with this Green Energy Committee was, well, we have all this money, instead of just letting it go into the general fund, and I know, Sarah, you probably know this as well as I do, they spend that money. As much as you bring in, they're going to spend it. But what we did is we set up an enterprise fund. And what's going to happen with 25% of that revenue that comes out of these green energy initiatives, they're going to be set up into call it a trust fund. It's an enterprise fund. And you have to spend that money on energy generation, conservation, or education, and that money's set aside.
That's great.
And it's and there's a committee that will be formed. It'll be made up of someone from the selectmen, someone from the finance committee, some citizens at large, and they will kind of agree as to how the money's going to be spent. And town meeting will have to approve it.
Sure.
But there's another beauty out of it, because these people in the town of Kingston voted for these turbines and these solar farms. So there is a reward that we put in place. Part of this money in this Green Enterprise Fund, which is Senate Bill 1915, it has to be passed by the House now, and it will, is there's a loan program that was setting up for the residents of Kingston. And we are a green community, which means there's higher building standards in the town of Kingston.
Right.
So we've got a local bank, South Weymouth Bank, and they're going to actually administrate the program. We're not going to get into checking references or credits or chasing bills. No, there'll be money put in this account, and citizens can go and borrow money from that account, and the structure is going to be basically set up as far as generation and conservation, and you'll get a free loan.
For what?
For if you wanted to put a new furnace in your house and conserve energy, we will loan you that money at 0% interest.
Wow.
And if you wanted to put solar panels on your home, we will loan you that money at 0% interest. The real beauty of that whole dynamic is they're going to hire the local contractors to put in the furnace, to put in the windows, to put on the solar. And I give the example of a furnace because in my case, I put in a new furnace in my house. It was $5,000. So I could go, I didn't, this was prior to, I could have gone to the bank and give me a 0% interest. Well, the utilities will give you a cash rebate within weeks of that investment. So now you've got the rebate from the utilities, sometimes there's a rebate from the state, or there might be a tax credit. You're getting 0% interest. So what we have done, and this is what I think Deval Patrick was getting at when he started this green community, we have created a mini green economy.
That's right.
In Kingston.
Exactly.
And when I'm saying I'm excited about that, it's an understatement. But if the little town of Kingston can do this at this level, it's a town of 12,000 people. I don't have to tell anybody about Kingston. We're neighbors. If we can do this, think of what if all the towns in the Commonwealth got on board and realized the potential. Because ultimately, as Glenn mentioned, we cannot sustain our dependence on the fossil fuels. And when I said earlier, you can make money being green, which I have at the restaurant, well, here's a municipality that got green and they're making money. And we call them green dollars in Kingston. And they're going to be reinvested in the local economy. And it's
That's
quite
wonderful.
a great,
Yeah, that's
great
very
concept.
exciting. It really is.
Fantastic.
You know, and I want to come back to that. I want to talk a little bit about how you were managed to do that, to get yourself being a green economy, a community. But let me just step over to Glenn for a second and tell me a little bit about your and how did you get involved in the alternative?
About 6 years ago, through the Cape Wind Project, I got real interested in wind power and started researching both wind and solar. And it's fascinating to see how the economics have changed in the last 5-6 years on those two issues. One of the great things about wind, as we just heard from the discussion from Mark, is that wind turbines can generate lots of revenue and it could be an important economic stream in a community. That was not true with solar 5-6 years ago. Solar was still too expensive relative to other ways of generating electricity. Just in the last year or two, the price of solar has plummeted dramatically to the point where it's almost cost competitive per watt with wind. And I think what we're going to see moving forward are both wind projects and solar projects being pursued at the municipal and residential level in ways that we didn't see 5 years ago.
Right.
And so I started sort of, my entree to it was from wind. I've done some development myself. I've learned firsthand just how hard it is to accomplish all these wonderful things that Mark has just seen. It's no secret that here in Massachusetts, and in particularly southeastern Massachusetts, there's a vocal debate going on between those who support wind and those who are concerned about wind. Mostly outside of the town of Carver, you don't see that kind of debate with solar. I think what we've all experienced here in Carver in the last 6 months is sort of unique in that respect. And I know I learned a lot from going through that experience, and I hope we can share some of that here today.
Sure, sure. So, Mark, tell us, in becoming a green community, I myself know the steps that the town has to go through. We have done almost all of them. We've zoned a place in North Carver in the commercial area so that not only can businesses come there, but they're encouraged to go there. They don't have to, if they're a green business, they don't need a special permit. Just a regular permit review process. And we've pretty much written our energy plan. That's not quite finished. The stumbling block in Carver seems to be this stretch code. And it seems to be very hard in this town to help people understand a couple of things. One is that, as I understand it, each year that we don't adopt the stretch code, that stretch code for that year becomes building code. And so now the next year, the stretch code that we're asked to adopt to become a green community is just that much more difficult, if you will, a little bit tighter. And I think that people, some of the people who seem most vocal against it just really don't want to be told, how they can build their homes. And I think we're probably familiar with the flip side, which is, personally, why would I want to pay NSTAR more money? I mean, why would I not want a better window, insulated window, or better, more efficient furnace? So it's been kind of an uphill struggle, and certainly respect people's opinions here. But just give us your take on that in Kingston.
The stretch code we knew would be our biggest hurdle. We had a town meeting. We got this cute little flyer that we handed out. But prior to town meeting, we had a lot of outreach programs with our green energy committee. We had, the selectmen who would present in front of the selectmen. And everyone's fear was that it's going to cost too much. It wasn't I don't want Big Brother telling us what to do. But as you alluded to, when this stretch code was coming on for us to approve, it was already pretty much on the books on the state level that these policies and procedures were going to be in place anyway. So, either you're going to like it today or you're going to like it tomorrow.
Right.
But what we were able to do is we were able to show them the savings that they would make if they actually built homes with more insulation and different lumber and different techniques that are more conservation driven. And what you saw was you'd see where your investment was like a 3.4 to a 3.7 return on an investment. And what they do is there's a HERS rating on homes, and that's how they rate how energy efficient your home is.
You have to explain what HERS is, though, for those who might not be
Well,
familiar.
a HERS rating, it's real simple. They're going to put a big blower in a window, and they're going to blow air into the house and see how much air gets blown out. I'm making it really simple, but that's how it works, is seeing how tight your building is. So, it comes with a HERS inspection when you have this thing done. Well, the fact of the matter, I think what you're going to, if you talk to some of the realtors as they're looking forward down the road into this next decade or century. You have home inspections right now. Well, what you're going to see from the banks in the very near future is a HERS inspection, because next to your mortgage payment, now, it didn't used to be like this, Glenn, as we were growing up, your biggest expense is how much energy you're paying for that house.
Right.
So this is going to be a factor in when somebody buys a house, and if you can come in and say, I've got a 95% HERS rating, it'll be a selling attribute to your home. So when town meeting was going over this, there was some pushback, and the contractors were the ones that were a little bit nervous about it. It's like, Mark, they can't afford to put an addition on now or build a house now, and you're going to add 20% to it or 12% to it. You know, it's just cost prohibitive. But what happened at town meeting, and you know it as well as I do, Sarah, is it was a reasonable request, and we asked the people in the audience, and it probably prevailed 85 to 15%, because most people saw the merit. Once they were educated, once they were informed, it's like, you know what, this makes sense. Because a lot of those people, not everyone embraces climate change or whatever, but a lot of people realize we cannot really be wrestling with our dependence on oil for whatever level, whether it causes asthma, whether there's body bags coming back from the Mideast, or the world is melting. There's so many reasons why you could do it, but at a town meeting, once they realized once they were educated and informed, it won. It sailed through, and we are now a green community which get great benefits.
Yeah.
And I want to go on for 1 second, because this is what we told these people at town meeting. If we're a green community, they're going to give us money.
That's right.
Because they were supposed to be like $10 million
the state
for the kitty.
Right.
They're going to give us money. So we're thinking, gee, maybe we'll get $2 million, because no one else is going to qualify. It didn't go down that way. But what the state did give us was a check for $164,000.
Everything helps.
And, well, that was a lot of money. And all that money had to go into, we rehabbed the fire station, we rehabbed a library, and we rehabbed fire station, library, and it wasn't the town hall. Third building, it wasn't the Reed building. 3 buildings. And they retrofitted all the buildings. And what happened when the numbers were all crunched down, we were saving, if I'm not mistaken, I brought my little cheat sheet with me. We were saving $102,000 a year once the retros were done.
That's terrific.
So they gave us $164,000. We saved $102,000, and the payback, the return on investment, was 1.5 years. And the trick to town meeting that I think we had, that we could sell it, we gave out these little flyers with all this little information. Instead of trying to get up with a PowerPoint presentation, you click on a PowerPoint, pull down their eyelids, you're going to lose them. But they get these before they sat down, so they had all the information in front of them. So now we're just reinforcing what they saw. So what happened at town meeting was they saw what we're going to do, we're going to spend it, and they said, you know what, is the elementary school was the 3rd building. This makes sense. This is a good business sense. If I'm at home, this is a good deal.
Yeah.
And that's what tripped them. So the people in the audience that said, oh, the stretch code, it's no good, and everyone else said, well, it might not be great, but look at what we're getting out of it.
Right.
Again, we educated them, and I hate to say it, we bribed them.
No, don't say it that way.
Wow.
How do you mean? How do you mean that?
Well, money talks.
Them.
Okay.
This is what it's all about. This is the American system, it's capitalism, and money, unfortunately, really drives the bus sometimes. And when we show them that we're going to save them some tax money, we're going to make their buildings more efficient, it registered in them. Because nobody has money anymore. Everything's tight, and bribe might have been the wrong word, but I'm going to stick with it.
Sarah, what I would suggest is that fundamentally what I hear Mark saying is that these are the right things to do because they make economic sense.
Right.
And then you can talk about the environmental and the other reasons to do it, but fundamentally they make economic sense.
Right.
And one issue that I have with the way the state refers to that code that you talked about is the idea that it's called a stretch code. I'm not sure that's the best label to use in the first place. It really isn't, because stretch implies or infers that, it's not something that's good for us or something we should do. Someone's forcing us to go beyond what makes sense.
Right.
But in fact, it's really a code that's just based on common sense. When oil was $10 a barrel, $15 a barrel, not that long ago,
Right.
maybe it was okay to have only 3 inches of insulation in a house and have windows that were single pane, and the amount of air that flowed in and out of your house wasn't a big deal. You'd just turn the heater on and heat it up, or turn the air conditioning on in the summer and cool it off. But here we are again. Oil's now north of $100 a barrel. Just in the last month, it looks like my gas price has gone from $3.40 a gallon to like $3.80 a gallon,
Right.
and now I'm hearing projections are by Memorial Day it's going to be close to $4 a gallon.
Yeah.
Once you start talking about energy at those prices again, it's not a stretch code to build a house in a way that it uses 25-30% less energy. It's just basic common sense.
Absolutely.
And it really doesn't cost that much more money to do it for builders to build a house that has the proper insulation and conservation.
Mm.
And after all, it sort of goes to the fundamental title of what I think your show is today, which is that when you talk about the energy generation side of the ledger, the other side of that is, where does the energy go? How do you use it? How efficient are you? And whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, I'd like to believe that we could all agree that no matter where our energy or electricity comes from, we would all agree that we should use it in an efficient way.
Right.
We're here in New England. To me, it just sort of speaks to one of our best characteristics as New Englanders, which is sort of, call it the Yankee frugality.
Sure.
It just makes sense to build a house and live our lives in a way in which we use energy as efficiently as we possibly can.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, tell me, both of you, in the towns you've worked in, Kingston, and I guess, Glenn, you've been in Wareham and maybe some other towns. Well, maybe I should start with you, Glenn. How do you work with residents and to get things so that it's win-win? I guess it's for the municipality, for whoever's developing the solar or the wind facility, and also for the residents. How does that?
Yeah, it's
How does it
a
work?
great question, one that's really difficult to answer.
And I'm sure it's different in different towns as well.
I would suggest to you, and I mean this sincerely, I'm delighted to meet with Mark today because I think what Kingston has done is actually on the leading edge of what's going on in this state.
Yes, I do too.
It's no secret that doing any kind of renewable energy project is controversial and not easy to accomplish. And maybe one of the secrets, maybe it's not a secret, but one of the key lessons is that doing these projects in a way that have direct municipal benefit, that it's not a private company doing something for private gain exclusively, but something that happens that has a direct, tangible benefit to the citizens in a town, really ends up causing a different result than I think what you see, for example, with the Cape Wind project or other projects where it's less clear to a citizen in a town, well, what's the benefit to me in my house as a taxpayer of supporting that renewable energy facility to get built in my town? So I would suggest to you that Kingston is actually probably the current perfect example of what the right way to do it is. The town of Hull, a decade ago, was the sort of shining example in our state.
Right.
I think Kingston is right now. I can't think of any other municipality in the state that has accomplished as much as Kingston has with the support of the citizens.
No, I would
What
agree.
you see generally in other towns through the state is huge debates at the local level, at the permitting level, for every single wind project that gets proposed, for sure. And again, not much debate about solar, but as we saw here in Carver, there's certainly those people who are rightfully concerned to make sure that even solar projects get properly cited.
Sure. Now, you used a phrase that I think is very important. You said that these projects have been done to benefit the municipality, the citizens. And I think that's a big deal for those of us who are either in government or have worked with local governments. Just the fact that the municipality is the citizens is something that sometimes gets lost. There's a disconnect, I guess, the citizens, the taxpayers versus, the municipality.
Right.
And the municipality, we are the municipality, the taxpayers. So it's a nice concept. So there's probably some sort of gap, maybe, where that's not coming across when you have that disconnect.
And some of it, and Mark knows this, I'm sure, firsthand, is up until 2 years ago, it was really hard to do a renewable energy project and have the benefits flow directly to the citizens in a town. It was possible to do. Hull, for example, did that. But they were unique. They owned their own power lines. It was a municipally owned power system, so it was sort of easier for Hull to do it than most other municipalities in the state. And then the law changed 2 years ago through the leadership of not only Governor Patrick, but Senate President Murray and Senator Pacheco. And we did this thing, the Green Communities Act, and then other amendments that I believe Kingston was instrumental in helping go through the legislature in 2010, that now all of a sudden allowed this new concept called net metering and virtual net metering and other legalese. But the bottom line is it allowed the kinds of things that Mark himself just described to us earlier about the 4 turbines that they just built. You couldn't do that years ago and have those economic benefits flow directly to citizens, but now you can. And maybe Kingston is showing all of us the right way to do this.
So on that note, this net metering, just explain that for those who may not quite get the concept.
Mark, you want
A
to
power
try
purchase agreement is a municipality enters into an agreement with a private company and has a certain number. There's a certain amount of money that actually comes back to that municipality, correct?
Correct.
And with the net metering agreement, there's no changing money doesn't change hands here. Help me out.
It's, even those that have written the law don't understand it. I'll give you my simple take on it. What happened with the Green Community Act and the net metering concept was you were only going to get the retail price on the energy that you generated. Excuse me, the wholesale price. Now you get the retail price. So Kingston's paying 14 cents kilowatt hour. That's what the utilities will pay us for the electricity we generate. It used to be like 6 cents. So now what happens is when you get into a purchase power agreement with D&C Construction, they're the ones that put the turbine on the landfill. Now, they have to make their money, and the town wants their share. So this is not exact, but what happened was DC says, look, 6 is the wholesale price. We need 11 to pay our bills. We're going to give you the delta on what you're paying and the 11.
What does
so
that
we're
mean?
getting the 4. So Kingston's getting 4 cents.
Okay.
Those are not accurate numbers. Those are just hypothetical.
Right.
I can't give you the exact numbers because I'd probably be in a little bit of trouble. It's public information. It's not exact, but that's how it works. And until this green energy, and then there was another article that passed in the Senate. There was a budget amendment put in last November or December. What it said was, you don't have to use all that power on site because Kingston only uses so much power. Our turbine in the solar farm, that would have been all the municipal energy we use. We would have plugged everything in.
Right.
But what they said was, you can generate up to 10 megawatts, and you can put that power directly into the grid, and you'll get a check, and then share your check. So when that happened, now private entities could go at a municipality and say, hey, we'll put that up for you. You don't have to take out a bond. Go to your town meeting and say, hey, let's borrow $7 million. It put in place a business plan so private entities could now get that revenue stream to put up the turbines on the solar farms. That was a huge shift to make it work, as Glenn would say, in a business sense. Again, it came down to, where's the money? How's it going to work?
So So the one that has gone through in Carver on the paddock box, that is not a power purchase agreement. That's a net metering, and we're getting 11% discount on our energy. And just, you want to talk about that one a little, or?
Yeah, sure. So it used to be, going back a couple of years ago, that if someone built a renewable project and the town wanted to purchase that electricity, you would purchase it for a fixed price for the next 10 or 20 years. The town would agree 2 years from now to pay 9 cents a kilowatt hour. That would escalate at a fixed rate every year for 10 or 20 years.
And we would be paying them 9 cents to NSTAR.
And then you would separately be paying an amount to NSTAR, the local distribution company, for the right to send that electricity through their wires.
Okay.
And the way it now works is, instead of taking the risk of trying to guess at what the price of electricity will be each year for the next 20 years, you no longer have, a municipality no longer has to guess at that. What the agreement for the paddock property says is the town is still going to purchase its electricity from a private competitive energy supplier.
Which is NSTAR in this case.
Well, it's actually a separate company from NSTAR,
right, excuse me,
under this deregulation of electricity industry.
Yeah.
So you pay, to simplify, you pay two different charges to get municipal electricity. One is the price you pay for the electricity itself. That actually goes to a third party, a private company. And then you also pay NSTAR for the right to bring that electricity you've purchased through their wires into municipal facilities and buildings. And with the paddock property agreement, under this net metering, what you do is there's no change to what I just described. You still buy your electricity on a competitive bid. You still pay NSTAR for the right to transport it to the town. But now, the company that generates electricity through the solar panels that will be built on the paddock property signed an agreement with the town that said, for every kilowatt hour we generate on the paddock property, we will give you a discount equal to 11% of what you would otherwise pay to that third-party energy company and to NSTAR.
Right.
And I know that's even more confusing or complicated than I'd like, but the bottom line is you don't have to guess anymore what the price of electricity will be. All you have to do is say, is it a good thing to get an 11% discount from whatever we pay?
Exactly.
So in other words, you can't lose money. It's impossible to lose money under this new arrangement. The only risk you take is that you could have saved more money.
Right.
But you can't lose money by agreeing to take an 11% discount every year for the next 20 years.
Because if you have to buy something, it's better to buy it at a discount.
Exactly.
Right. So that's the way I think of it.
I would guess, knowing what Kingston's municipal use is, my guess, you might know better than I do, that's probably between $70,000 and $90,000 a year, I would guess, if you're talking 11% of what your total energy use is. It's got to be 800 or 900.
It's a very good guess. And what Carver did with the net metering agreement for the paddock property is, since there's only a handful of such agreements that we know of in the whole state, the town decided to walk before it runs. So the town only entered into an agreement for, I think it was 25% of its total electric needs in the short term, so that the town could learn from this, provide other opportunities for other property owners to maybe do similar renewable energy projects on their cranberry bog or other large acreage in town.
And also to make sure we can still do, and it makes sense to do conservation, energy conservation. Because if we're all maxed out and...
And so the Carver basically took a quarter of its needs and did this agreement and said, let's step back, see how it goes, what lessons we need to learn, and then maybe the right thing to do is do more of this in the next couple of years and get to that level of savings that Mark just described.
Yeah.
And I would have to guess, Sarah, maybe, I don't know how the whole agreement worked, but if it's 25% and you get 11%, so maybe it's $30,000 the town's getting, I don't know.
No, we're actually not getting money. That's the point.
Well, you're getting savings.
We're getting
There's
savings.
$1
That's correct.
Equivalent. But my guess is those panels are taxed.
Yes. Yes, personal
And
property
there's another
tax.
piece.
Mhm.
And if those panels, what are the panels worth?
That's a hard
3
question.
million?
A good chunk of change.
Yeah, okay. Well,
We're
let's,
also, on this particular property,
yeah.
it was in chapter land. And so now those 4 acres have been taken out of chapter land, which is a special, for
The
those who don't know,
agricultural,
which is
yeah.
kind of a way to help the farmers save some money as long as the land stays in farming. So that particular piece of his larger parcel was taken out of chapter land, and now he has to pay, or would have had to pay, full value on that. And instead of paying full value, he's paying 12% of what the full value would be. So now, instead of us getting practically zero, which is what we get in taxes for that piece,
Yeah.
we're at least getting 12% of the value. So it's helping us at the municipality, the citizens, and it's helping him. It's allowing him to keep in business, stay afloat. So I just wanted to.
Well,
interject.
my guess is that's probably $35,000 or $40,000 a year in
It's a
taxes.
good guess.
And that's the information that you got to tell
Yeah.
the citizens.
Yeah.
It's like, look at what happened over here. We're getting about, call it a number, we're getting $75,000. We get some panels in the woods. Nobody knows it's there. That's 2 teachers. Come on, kids, wake up.
Yeah.
Let's keep this going. and those numbers, that's what people want to hear. That's, you're not going to talk over their head. That's the information that you want to put forward when you bring these projects before a town meeting, because they're only going to look at the bad side, and they're only going to listen to the people with the big voices that have all this doom and gloom to their statement. Well, you got to put a silver lining there and say, hey, this is the other side, and look at it. And that information is probably the most important information you have for the citizens of Carver or any town that's trying to accomplish this, is that there is some positive upside here that can help you with your taxes, your bills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I just get so excited about this stuff.
It's so great. I'm really glad. So I didn't know if there was anything else that either of you wanted to discuss. I mean, a number of things had come up in Carver that I don't know if you wanted to touch on any of those issues that had been brought up, noise issues, health issues. I think among us here we understand that, at least in terms of solar, that's not those aren't issues. But things like these have been, when people don't know about something, they have questions, and that's certainly legitimate to have questions.
Yeah, I think there are great resources out there if you're willing to look at it. So let's take the sound from turbines. I've never heard of a problem with a solar panel. Heaven forbid everyone that drives by my restaurant's going to die because they get solar panels. The glare is going to kill them. I've never heard a problem with solar. But I have heard with wind. And the state has done an in-depth study about wind and the inaudible sound, what do they call it? Not ultrasonic,
Oh,
but
infrasound.
infrasound, which is a new term that they're throwing on. There's been brilliant scientists and mathematicians that have looked at this and they've made their conclusions. So if you want to be informed, go to these websites. You can go into MassGov and look on wind sound and educate yourself. And you're going to realize, and we went through the Mass Technology Collaborative to help us with this stuff, and we had a couple of sound engineers that helped us. This is before this all came up. But there's lots of information out there that will put to rest the false accusations that are being put out by, in some cases, people that aren't even from the area that are actually paid lobbyists. You think PACs are a problem on the national level? There's groups out there that they'll bring in people from Virginia or Philadelphia. And all they are scaremongers, and they will give you all kinds of facts and information. And if you do your homework, you're going to find out what they're putting forth is not necessarily true. So again, if they can educate themselves, or you can educate those folks before the meetings as to how all this stuff works, you're going to be in a better position to push your agenda forward.
And Sarah, I agree with everything Mark just said, and just to sort of take it to a slightly different level. I know I learned a lot from the citizens in Carver and the work that I did here this fall, which is that in wind power, you always sort of hear the discussion, is a particular project appropriately cited? And I think that's a lesson that everyone who supports renewable energy needed to learn.
Absolutely.
There are some people in the town of Falmouth who think that 2 turbines were built too close to their homes, and they've raised some concerns about it, and that sort of discussion sort of gets carried through the wind to wind projects proposed in communities statewide. That same discussion in Carver happened over a solar project.
Correct.
It really hadn't happened before. As Mark said, we've had solar panels near human beings on restaurants, on elementary school roofs for literally decades. There really haven't been too many problems. But there were some good folks in Carver who really wanted to raise the issues and bring that sort of discussion to the front. Is a solar project appropriately sited?
Right.
And one of the lessons I learned is that that's a really good question to ask.
Yes.
And it probably is true that not every solar project is perfectly sited. And we all needed to learn together, well, where do solar projects make sense, and maybe where don't they make a lot of sense?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And I think taking that discussion that started in the fall and continuing even through last night when the select boards, the name of the committee that Will Sinclair heads.
It's actually a planning board subcommittee, the Solar Bylaw Study Committee.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I thought this some select meeting appointed
there's someone
some
from
folks.
the Board of Selectmen on it. That's
Oh,
correct.
okay.
Mhm.
And sort of working on coming up with a balanced bylaw that makes sure that residents are protected, or at least have their concerns appropriately addressed at the planning board when a solar project gets proposed in town, and balances those obviously needed protections for residents with the ability for landowners to still make best use of their land, and for renewable energy in the form of solar projects that actually happen in town and provide the economic benefits and other environmental benefits that come with renewable energy.
Now, when you say protect the residents, what do you mean?
Well, using plain English, I would boil it down into two groups of issues. One is physically protect them in terms of any health and safety issues that may come up. Some of the peer review work I did for Carver showed that there really aren't any substantial health and safety issues that have been proven from solar. And then I think a lot of that work was well received. There were some folks who said, well, but can you prove to us that it's not harmful? And of course, proving a negative is a really difficult thing to do.
It really is.
Yeah. So the sort of one bucket, so to speak, of issues is sort of this: make sure that my health and safety of my family is protected. The second bucket of issues I would classify as the aesthetic sort of property value bucket, which is, do I want to look at this? Do I think it's fits in with the character of my neighborhood? And if I don't think it's attractive, will that have a negative impact on the value of my property, which for most of us, our property is, our house is the main asset that we own in our family.
Absolutely.
And so it's sort of, does it affect my health? Does it affect my property value is sort of where it comes from. And, you know, maybe having a 3-acre solar field 100 feet from people's backyards when they were expecting and in fact maybe told that it was going to be a open space cranberry bog, maybe that's not an appropriately sited project, and maybe having minimum setbacks that are far greater than, you know, that project in particular. I think it was a 25-foot setback the applicant proposed. Maybe that's not the right balance.
Yeah, I would agree, absolutely.
And so sort of one way to say it is, I think Carver is sort of taking the lead, at least on solar, with the bylaw and the sort of compromise bylaw that I listened to at last night's meeting, where people are trying to find the common ground between the two different perspectives, and say, well, of course we want renewable energy in the form of solar to happen in town, but of course we also want to make sure that residents and their property values and their health are adequately protected as well. I think Carver and what you may be doing at upcoming town meeting, I'm not sure if this is airing before town meeting or
I
after.
don't know.
But either way, what will be brought to town meeting, as I understood it from last night's meeting, is something that I suspect will be a bylaw that is probably in the leadership position in the state of trying to find the appropriate balance between those two perspectives.
This was, as you call it, the compromise bylaw. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
that's
don't
a
know
good
if compromise is the right word or balanced
I think it's
approach is the
appropriate.
right word, but
That's appropriate.
you know, one of the things that I think is a shame in the whole renewable energy debate, whether it's wind or solar, is the people who advocate for the renewable energy think that the people who raise concerns, you know, don't support renewable energy, and then the other side views the renewable energy supporters as these, you know, folks coming out of the 70s in Woodstock who wear Birkenstocks all day and want to just do renewable energy irrespective of whether it makes economic sense, irregardless of whether or not it makes environmental sense.
Right.
And I think the truth lies way in the middle of those two perspectives. I think
Absolutely.
that pretty much everyone supports renewable energy, no matter where they come from on the subject, which political position they come from. And I think everyone just wants to find where is the right balance.
Right.
Where do you put these projects, whether it's wind or solar, so that it finds the appropriate, you know, interplay of the variety of concerns. And you're both elected selectmen. So I don't need to tell you, but you know, it's almost impossible to make everybody happy
Yes.
when it comes to resolving a public policy debate. But I think when it comes to renewable energy, the goal should be to try to upset or have the fewest number of people
Right.
concerned at the end of the process.
Oh, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we need to find a way to get past these debates and build as much renewable energy as we can. Primarily, I think, from what Kingston is showing us, because it makes economic sense. It can be a fiscal benefit for every municipality. And I think that's the key to focus on.
Yes.
And then once we realize that it makes sense from a dollar perspective, gee, look at all these other environmental and geopolitical and international benefits we could get by generating our energy locally instead of trying to transport it from 3,000 or 5,000 miles away.
Absolutely. I agree. Mark, you have any wrap-up thing that you'd like to say? I guess we're running out of time.
Change doesn't come easy, and I wasn't at Woodstock. My mother wouldn't let me go. But to a certain extent, we are in a revolutionary period as far as energy goes. It started with Jimmy Carter, when we had to alternate when we were going to get gas.
Yeah, you remember
Right.
that?
Of course I remember it. The name of our turbine is called the Independence, and that was named after a boat that went out of the Jones River called the Independence in 1812. And their purpose was to go out and beat the British because they slammed us with a Stamp Act. Anything that was printed, you had to pay this act. So the town got the naming rights, and we called it the Independence. So my point, I guess, to people out there, and to you, Sarah, is we have to get independent.
Yes.
And it takes, I'm not calling you a revolutionary, but Sarah, you seem to be in the leading carver. You seem to be trying to show the people the way. You seem to be trying to create dialogue and compromise. And that's what it's going to take, people like yourself and people like my Green Energy Committee in Kingston, to educate the people, to hopefully bring them along, you know, to make the this planet a better place. So I commend you for doing it's not your job, what your passion is. I commend you.
Thank you.
And keep it up, and it's been a pleasure chatting.
Thank
with
you, Mark.
Glenn.
Appreciate it. Glenn,
You're here.
anything?
No.
Thank you for being here with us today. I'm Sarah Hewins, the Conservation Agent for the Town of Carver. The show is Conservation Matters, and today we've been discussing conservation and energy. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.